If you have been to prison just once, you will experience homelessness at a rate that's 7 times higher than that of the general public.
If you have been to prison more than once, you will experience homelessness at a rate that's 13 times higher than that of the general public.
If you are a black man who has been incarcerated, your chances of living on the streets are far greater than if you are white or Hispanic.
If you are a black woman that's been incarcerated, your chance of living in the shelter is 4 times greater than a white man and twice as a black man. Michigan has 787 laws that keep people with records from meeting the basic needs such as housing and employment.
787.
I'm Jerry. I'm a motivated personality. I'm a passionate person. I was born on the rough streets of Detroit and raised by a single mother who succumbed to drugs when I was a young boy. I became the streets of Detroit in order to survive the ever-changing dynamic of what was known as the murder capital. I served 11 years in prison for drug possession and conspiracy charges. Working for 32 cents an hour has a way of creating an amazing drive and work ethic. All that time and productivity wasted, I told myself that when I was released, I would never waste time again. I want fairness. I want to be judged and rewarded based on merits. I want a safe environment for my family to be raised in. I want action and not politics. My record does not define me.
I am Gabe. I'm a good husband, a thoughtful friend, and a successful business owner. I'm a recovering addict, and soon I will be a father. I was incarcerated for 3.5 years. My record represents me at my lowest point, which was a long time ago. I've done so much good since then. My record is a part of my story. It is not who I am. Incarceration helped me to mature, to grow up, and learn about personal responsibility. I'm a completely different person now. Before, I only knew how to take. Now, I bring something to the table, like helping other men with substance abuse issues. I want people like me to have the same chance everyone else does. A good, prosperous life, free from the stigma of our pasts.
I am Anthony. I'm a father of 3. I'm a kind-hearted person and a peacemaker. I give a person a shirt off my back. A few years ago, May 4th, 2013, I was shot 9 times. I suffer from PTSD and anxiety. I deal with it through therapy. In 2008, I was young and stupid, drug charges, home invasions. I wish I never did it. Your record follows you for the rest of your life. It feels like a rock was just on you and you can't get from under it. I changed. I learned to distance myself from certain people and stay out of certain areas and hang around positive people that's not going to get me in trouble. I want to be treated equally and not be judged off my rap sheet.
I am EB. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I'm an outgoing person. I'm a precinct delegate, block club president, and a super duper PTA parent. I have to prove myself continuously because of my gun and drug charge. Because of my record, it prohibits me from being a chaperone at my children's school. I want society to look at returning citizens differently. I'm not even the same person I was 10 years ago. Before, it was all about me. Now I love to talk and fight for people who need help. I want women to come home from prison and transition to a positive situation. I want real jobs for us, not those nickel and dime jobs. I want moms to come home with their head raised high, proud to their children. When I came home from prison, I didn't have any place to stay. So I turned to my family. Hey, Mom.
Hey, honey, I got a call from your parole officer, but unfortunately you can't stay here, EB. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I know it's not your fault. You live in a senior citizen home, and I know I can't stay here. I miss you. Next, I turned to a family member. I went over to my aunt's house.
Hey, baby. I got a place for you to stay. Unfortunately, I'm not looking to have the police here, so you're going to have to use your mom's address for parole.
At least I got a roof over my head. I'll be out your here real soon. I'm going to go look for a job.
Yeah.
So I decided to try the place that I worked for while I was in print. How you doing, sir?
All right.
Heard you were hiring.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I can build, I can lay concrete, I also can read blueprints. Are you all hiring?
Yes, we are. Unfortunately, your record is going to be a problem.
Well, I have 2 strong years with you all.
I understand, but the rules are the rules. I can't break the rules.
Because of my drug charge 10 years ago, I still can't get a job.
When I got out of prison, I didn't have anywhere to stay. I tried to talk with the landlord to put me on the lease, but he denied me.
How you doing today, sir?
Right.
Good. Well, I've got your application here. Everything looks good. Looks like you meet the income requirements.
Yes.
The only thing missing is I don't see a rental history. Where were you staying most recently?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to speak with you in person about. I just recently came home from prison. I'm actually on parole now. I served 11 years for possession with intent to deliver cocaine back in 1994. I'm trying to put my life back together. All I need is housing. The reason I applied here because it's right down the street from where I work. It would really help me out.
Yeah, I wish we could help you. The apartment complex here, we've got a no drug charge policy, so unfortunately we can't.
But that was back in 1994.
Yeah, it doesn't matter when it was, I'm sorry.
Tell them how much you need this. Tell them how it was way back in 1994 and it was a non-violent crime. Just try that. I bet you that'll work.
Sir, this crime is 17 years old. It's a non-violent crime. I paid my debt to society. Is there anything you can do for me?
Listen, they just don't allow us any flexibility, I'm sorry.
Man, he's not listening to you. Tell him you're a deacon in your church. Tell him how you contribute to society. Do not let him focus on your past. Go.
Sir, are you a believing person?
Yes, I am.
I found God while I was in prison, and since I came home, I've become a deacon of my church. I'm a youth pastor. I sit on various boards in my community. I'm really trying to solve the issues of community violence. I really need this. Is there anything you can do for this, sir?
You know, that's really good to hear. I mean, it warms my heart to hear all that stuff. And hopefully, since you're involved in the church, they'll have some resources there for you for housing. Unfortunately, this isn't the place.
I'm free, but I'm still locked up.
When I got out of prison, I didn't have anywhere to stay. So some friends tried to do me a favor by going in an apartment with me. So, how's it going? Thank you.
You approve.
Thank you.
You approve.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I can't accept your application.
They just don't give us any options.
When I got out of jail, I didn't have anywhere to stay. I was basically homeless. I tried to get a house and a job, but they always did a background check, so I broke the law again. Hey man, can you make me a fake ID?
Fake ID?
Yeah.
It's gonna cost you, but I can do it.
Okay. Can I have a job?
Sure.
Can I have a place to live?
Yeah, sure.
I end up getting a job, I end up getting a place to live, but I end up getting caught for it. I'm currently on probation for that now.
Because of 787 laws.
I couldn't find a place to live.
Because of 787 laws.
I couldn't find a job.
Because of 787 laws.
I had to break the law again.
787. 787.
I can work on houses.
Oh, really?
Yes, I can.
700.
I can hang drywall.
7.
I can put doors on hinges. I can even put a window inside this wall. I know how to mud. I can make homes.
787.
Let us in.
787.
I want people like me to have the same chance everyone else does. A good, prosperous life, free from the stigma of our past.
I want real jobs for us, not those nickel and dime jobs. I want moms to be able to come home from prison and raise their heads proudly to their children.
I want fairness, and I want to be judged and rewarded based on the merits. I want action and not politics.
I want to be treated equally and not judged off my rap sheet.
Because of 787 laws, I'm still locked up.
But
I want to come home.
Weren't they great? I just appreciate your vulnerability so much and sharing your stories with me and with them. I had the privilege, I am Amy, and I had the privilege of hearing their stories and helping to shape them into the performance that you see today. Thank you so much. Really, really great work. And what we'd like to do for the rest of our time is just prepared questions and answers in a panel form to kind of supplement what you saw in the performance. Because in the performance, as you saw, we had to stay in that hard place for dramatic effect, but it's all true, right? These housing barriers were there, these employment barriers were there. Thankfully, though, there have been some successes since then. So we just wanted to speak to that a little bit. So Gabe, you have the microphone. Why don't you go ahead and start?
Sure. So for me, how I ended up overcoming that barrier is basically by knowing somebody who worked in an apartment complex who was able to overlook that bit, who was willing to bend the rules for me. And that became a really common thread throughout my whole story. It's been 14 years since my release. I've gotten countless jobs, all from knowing somebody. I've never gotten a job from a cold call. I've never gotten a job at a large corporation. And same with housing. So, there's a piece of that. I always call it my networking. So there's a piece of that I feel like I did, but then there's also a piece of that always knowing somebody who was willing to hire me, break the rules, give me an apartment, that I feel like it has a little bit to do with white privilege. That can't be, if I take all the credit, I feel like I'm taking too much credit, right? So fast forward to today, I had a friend start a business. He gave me a job about 5 years ago. We were very small, and I became partners with him and his significant other, and now we have a pretty prosperous business. My wife and I bought a house a couple of years ago, so I don't have these issues today, but sometimes I just wonder what it would have been like had I not always known people.
Good. You just pass it down.
Yes, as I said, my name is Jared Ruffin. I am founding director of West Michigan Olive Tree out of Muskegon. How did I overcome those barriers? I actually still am faced with those barriers. We just heard Gabe speak on not receiving a job from a cold call, right? I've put in over 109 applications. Actually, it's more than that. I stopped counting at 109. I have 64 applied applications on Indeed just this year. So it's way more than 109. So I'm struggling with that. I felt that if I went back to school and got a degree and qualified myself, that things would change a little. I'm not really seeing it. So the nonprofit thing was my response to a society that wouldn't accept me. So my aim is to bring these services to those who don't have a voice and for those who fall through the cracks of what we're doing in reentry in Michigan.
Yes, I'm Anthony Jones. I'm a young advocate in training. Basically, I'm currently on probation, and I would like to tell my story and practice my story over and over to tell those others that's been through certain situations like mine to help them be able to tell their story and speak to victims of crimes and things like that. And that's about it.
Hello, I'm E.B. Jordan. So when I came home, I decided the fact that I didn't have any type of income, I applied for government housing and Section 8. And because I had a drug crime, they told me that I wouldn't qualify because I might turn the house into a drug house. Go figure. So I took my building trade skills I learned while I was in prison, and I went back to my old neighborhood and put my house back together and moved in. I started a nonprofit organization, S&D PJ Housing, to help women that's coming out. They wouldn't have to go through what I went through. And I also have Transition Kitchen to help kids to learn how to cook and return to citizens if they want to work in a kitchen, restaurant field. So that was my way of coming home and dealing with my situation and turn to a positive situation.
Very good, very good. You can just hang on to that for a second. So we acted out a scene where the leasing agent actually had compassion for Jarrett's story, but there was nothing that he could do, right, because of the legislation. And I know a couple of you have some stories regarding other discrimination, too, that you faced just simply from having a record beyond these barriers that we're familiar with. I know that Gabe has some in terms of applying to school. If anyone down the line wants to speak before him, you go ahead. Anybody?
Well, yeah, I was in jail for a few months, and I lost my job. I lost my place to live, and I lost my job. I lost my place to live, and I feel like I lost my job. I lost my place to live, and I feel like there should have been a program or things out there to help you get those things back, and but there isn't any, and.
Well, not on a personal level. I would just like to double down on what EB said. As a drug offender in the state of Michigan, there's a lot of things that you're not eligible for as far as public assistance is concerned. As a black man, when you come home, you need these things because black men, minorities period, are situationally homeless when they come home, most of us. So without those services, it pushes people like me back into the same thing that got us in prison in the first place. So currently in Michigan, you can be a rapist, you can be a murderer, you can be an armed robber, and you'll be eligible for food stamps and Section 8, but not if you're sold drugs. I feel that it should be all or nothing.
Yeah, so Amy mentioned it. So after I got off parole, I decided I wanted to go back to college. So I went to a community college, got an associate's degree with no hassle. And then I moved on to a university, and state university. And they, when I applied, they needed all of this information from me. And I was really astounded at how much they needed to know just in order to let me go get an education. I needed to put together my whole jacket, my pre-sentence investigation from when I originally committed a crime, get letters of recommendation from teachers, my old PO, people in the community, all this stuff, and then go sit in front of the Board of Regents just to have a chance at going to school. And it seemed really outsized in terms of, them protecting the campus, excuse me, versus the right that all of us should have to an education.
And Gabe, you're an employer now, so you have a unique perspective on some of this discrimination and the legislation. So what do you think would have helped you at the time of reentry? So we talk about expungement, but reentry, dream big. What would have helped you, or maybe speak from the position of being an employer, what is possible?
So I see all these organizations that do reentry, independent nonprofits, and they're trying to hook people up with jobs, right? So for me as an employer, we have Michigan Works here in the state. They've come to me and tried to help connect me with people in general looking for jobs. I've had one person, I've had one person come to me who's an employee who was on parole and say, "Hey, did you know you could get a tax credit? Fill out this paperwork and you'll get some money." And I was like, "That's awesome. Thank you for bringing that to me. I didn't know that." Nobody ever told me that. And I feel like expanding those types of programs and then having something that's actually state funded to, similar to Michigan Works, to market these people, match their skills with employers, and then market it to the employers and let us know it's a thing. Because I want to help people out, but I've also, as an employer, I do understand needing to mitigate and consider my employees' safety, right, and my property and all that stuff. I could use some help from the state in helping people.
And Jarrett, you had a similar idea to the like a Michigan Works program, right? Something that would have helped you coming out?
I think there's a saying. I don't know where it comes from or how far it goes back, but there's a saying that says you don't start coming home or getting off of parole when you get out of prison. You start that in prison. So I just think that Michigan should do more for us while we are in prison to keep us from having so many barriers and having to make such drastic decisions once we come home. After I come home, and let me say this right quick. When you come home from prison, after people are happy to see you, whoa, everything's wonderful. After about 90 days, people hate to see you coming. You know, the honeymoon's over very quickly. You know, so we need something to help us make that transition, and it has to start in prison. More than just teaching me how to dress for a job interview or giving me a script to say at the job interview. It's way much deeper than that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Anthony, you talked a little bit about the PTSD aspect and needing therapy, and I think that's part of this, right? With the when you come home from jail. So, do you want to just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. What would have helped me? What would have helped me at the time of reentry would have probably been like a program or therapy. As far as dealing with PTSD, because people go to jail and they come out with PTSD. But prior to me going to jail, like I said, I was robbed and shot 9 times, and I suffered from very, very bad PTSD. So going to jail just really triggered it. Staying in one room most of the day, and not be able to leave out, hearing loud noise, hearing people fight, things like that, guards yelling at you. It really triggers your PTSD. And so a program or something like that would have really helped me with my situation, reentry.
Well, as far as the housing go, I decided to start a property management company. I know a lot of people that have property, and I went to individual, personal, privately owned landlords and asked them, can I manage your property for people that's returning home from prison? Because, it's hard for, like, I couldn't get a house, and I didn't have income at the time. But people that do have a job and have income, they still have a hard time. So I rent out houses to people that's as felons,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going good so far. They're not tearing up the house and they paying their rent. But
yeah, you made your own way,
right?
Yeah.
So I felt that was like a big contribute to me because I didn't have anyone to turn to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So in the play, you probably noticed that each one stepped forward at a certain point and said, "When I got out of prison, this happened. When I got out of prison, this happened." Well, during rehearsals, we'd hear it slip when I came home from prison. And I always found that ironic because not everyone had a home to come back to, right? That's why we're here. So I guess my question along that line is like, not all of us have been there. Not all of us have had that experience. So some of you talked about it a little bit, but what is that like to believe that your punishment is behind you, perhaps be ready to change, but then the structures aren't supporting that? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, it was really hard for me because most of my life I was a straight A student in school. Long story short, my grandmother died. My mother took it very hard. She started to use drugs. It affected my life, and it pushed me into the Detroit public school system. I know you'd be from Detroit, but the worst public school system in the state pushed me there, right? I don't have enough time to tell you the things that I've seen walking just to and fro school every day, So when I got incarcerated, I felt like wasted talent, wasted potential, So while I was in prison, I was determined to prove to everyone I didn't belong here. I didn't feel like I belonged there. The people that I met in prison after we told each other why we were here, I said to myself most of the time, oh, you belong here, right? But I didn't believe that I belonged there. And I was determined on proving to myself and to society that they made a mistake with me.
So you had that strong mind and that strong personality we see so clearly, but yet you still ran into the barriers. Yeah. Go ahead, Gabe.
So for me, getting out of prison, it was like going from a place where I didn't have a whole lot of choices to make. And it was pretty easy to make the right choice when it was only A or B. And so a micro version of that was, I got home, and one of the first things you do, you go shopping to get your necessities, right? So toiletries, cosmetics. And so I like to use toothpaste as an example. So I'm used to the option, I could get the bad toothpaste, the cheap stuff, or the good stuff. That's it. That's the only choice. And 2 hours after getting out, I'm at Meijer, standing in front of a wall of toothpaste, bewildered. And that was just a micro version of going from 2 choices to 100 for literally everything in life, and constantly being worried whether you're going to make the right choice. And so that was very overwhelming. It was stressful, and it caused me a lot of fear. And so what helped me was being able to connect with people who'd been through what I've been through. My family, as much as they wanted to help, they just didn't get it, right? So I needed to connect with people, and I was able to do that through a recovery fellowship. The thing is, with the laws now, you got on parole, and you're not supposed to be in contact with anybody who's got a felony. So the people who you can help most, who can help you most, it's illegal for you. You're risking your freedom to even talk to them. You know, half of us, if we were driving during the commission of a crime, we can't drive on parole either. So we can't get to jobs. There's all these things the odds are stacked up against us. You know, and Amy said it. We feel like we've paid our debt, and then we got this whole other thing. That feels like the small part now. You know, the incarceration piece. 787, that's right.
Good. Did either of you want to speak? You're good on that one? Okay. Before we do a final wrap-up one, do you want me to take any other 10 minutes? Okay. Yeah. How about a couple pop-up responses to the play? 1 sentence or less. Anybody just want to yell anything out? Profound. Heartbreaking. Profiled. Courageous. Powerful. One more. Real. Good. So just to wrap up, you might feel like you've already said it, but is there anything else you have just such unique experiences and a perspective on this, and that not everyone does. So is there anything you want people to know in 1 or 2 sentences that you haven't already said?
I think the really important thing is for the people making the laws to listen to the impacted voices directly.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I was telling Amy earlier, things I've been through in my life have made me a very strong person. I don't know many people who could have gone through or who could go through the things that I have been through in my life and still not break the law. It's very hard for us when we come home from prison. I just want to put that point, snap down on that point, right? It's very hard. Many people coming home from prison with my background, they wouldn't come here and do this because they too busy surviving in the streets because they have nothing else.
When I came home, I was kind of embarrassed, and I didn't want to go back to my neighborhood because my block was a block where your neighbors get to beat the brakes off of you and you do something wrong. Flat out. And then when you get home, you get another whooping because you did something wrong on somebody's grass. But my neighbors welcomed me home with open arms, and they said, okay, you went and sat down, now what you going to do? And with that being said, they was like, move back on the block and put your house back together. You have building trades, do something with it. And then when the block club president passed, I decided to be the block club president. And they didn't take me serious at first, but then they took run for precinct delegate. Now, the fact that I was a felon, I didn't think I could put my name on the ballot. And then my whole neighborhood, not just my street, but my neighborhood voted for me to be precinct delegate. So that just made me say, all right, I went and sat down, and despite that, you could still live your life within society. But what hurt me is when I had to fill out that background check at my kid's school, And I was there for 3 years, and I was outstanding on purpose so I wouldn't have to do it. But they wanted me to be part of the board. And it came back, and it went to the principal. And the principal didn't have no idea I went to prison or for what. And he looked at me, and it's that look that you can never, ever take away. And he just looked at me, and I already put my head down like, I already know what you're going to say. And it said that I couldn't even set foot in Detroit public schools. And he looked at me, he said, "You're the best parent we have in this school. Despite this piece of paper, you are always welcome to come and volunteer. You can't go on the chaperones, but you can volunteer." But, you know, that's just my story.
Right. That's a great ending note. I thought that was going to end worse, so thank you. I'm glad that you heard the words that, yes. But Jarrett said it best, like not everyone can go through what you did. And so again, we really thank you. Never underestimate your journey. Look where you're sitting right now, making a difference. So thank you so much. So.